What are your pet peeves? Do you have any? This is the question my girlfriend asked me a couple days ago, and it's also what inspired this post. I told her I would think about it and get back to her because every time she had asked before, I had always given her the same generic response. I never actually got back to her, in fact, but I did find that one pet peeve of mine, and it's likely relevant for you as well. It's that I hate feeling like I'm wasting time, which led me to yet another question. What is a waste of time? And the answer I found for that is doing things we don't find value in. Then another question was born, and that was, feelings are subjective. If we feel like we're wasting time, then it can be subject to change, you know? What if we can make all of our time meaningful and productive because we see value in everything we do? So just learning how you can siphon as much value out of the things that you around you as possible. This made me think about how most people spend their time and, things they may be forced to do, obligations, responsibilities that they do regularly but don't value. Now, immediately when I mentioned that, some of you probably started thinking about school. And, growing up, a lot of kids believed that they'd be much better off if they weren't forced to spend 8 hours of their day in a classroom, right? Not even counting the hours for homework, studying, and, just overall time spent on thinking about school, getting ready for school, stuff like that. They also seem to get pretty annoyed when talking and thinking about other stuff that they could be doing. Now, I get it. Personally, I find myself getting quite impatient and even aggressive in some cases when I am held up in a place for too long. For example, when my mom and I would go to the store to pick a few things up, maybe after 10-15 minutes, I would be going absolutely apeshit in my head and obsessively thinking about things, all the other stuff that I could be doing, right? How long does it take to get a couple packs of hot dogs and a 6-pack of Diet Coke, right? So anyway, how do we get as much value from everything we do as possible? Well, develop a value for things based on the energy or time, right? Or maybe the resource that we use, the resource that we spend. This is how we develop value. Whether it be the time and energy to learn about the thing, or the money to purchase or buy or provide the resource, right? And we like to justify the things that we value. So if we like to be correct in our beliefs, which we all do, so we'll have these cognitive biases, or as I like to call them, blind spots. We tend to overlook the flaws that we have invested a lot into. Now, this is where I was reminded of, and I fully started to consider our school system. Everyone there, including myself, seemed to despise being there. None of us had seen any value in it, and sure, we were told that, oh, you'll get a good education, a nice job, settle down, blah, blah, blah. But, bro, we were like 5. We had no idea what any of that shit meant. And most of us told ourselves that we would never get married, or girls are dumb and have cooties around that time, right? Or we were completely preoccupied with Legos or Hot Wheels or Lincoln Logs in Minecraft. At least that was the case for me. Now, we don't value what they were telling us because they weren't relating the information to our 5-year-old selves. Maybe some teachers did, and quite frankly, maybe you remember those teachers. But they weren't trying to help us learn about the world and develop our values and beliefs through trial and error, right? They just assumed that these things were common sense because everyone else around them shared similar views, right? They neglected that we were just children. And I want to note that these people aren't inherently bad for this, right? It's a cognitive bias referred to as a blind spot for a reason. You can't fucking see it. Okay? And this is going to be a quick rant, but I'll put the timestamps in the description so you can skip to the next part if you want. But to elaborate on what I just mentioned, I find the problem with the school system, and at least the US, is to be the lack of overall understanding about what a teacher actually is. They're focused on rather than being, how can I get these children to really understand and develop a will to learn and a desire, becomes, how can we get through all of this content? They increase their understanding about the actual subject that they're teaching without taking into heart the principles of how to teach and relate the content to these kids. And that's likely because that's also how they were taught, right? Now, for most of the kids in this industrial society, the teachers spend much more time with them than their own parents do. Now, that might sound like, whoa, like, but this means the school holds more influence over the children's development than, their own parents. And, likely for us middle to lower class income families, this is the case. And it's not the case for every family, no. Of course there are outliers, and I'm not saying the parents aren't doing their best, but they're out there providing. They're trusting their kids to the school system, right? They're wanting them to get a better education. They're putting their all into working so that way they can give this kid a better education, and they're expecting the school to do that for them. Now, I know I've bashed on the system quite a bit, but while there is some room for improvement, I also want to say that, in truth, our school system is one of the most widely available and advanced in history. We have much more teachers and with higher qualifications than before, right? The issue, I believe, is lying in the lack of understanding and importance of the teacher's role that is taught to upcoming educators. Rants over, back to topic, right? You remember that one good teacher you had? Likely you do, because they could relate to you. Maybe you haven't really thought about it, but they were able to understand that maybe this topic was a little harder and needed some explanation, some extra time put on it. And they were able to understand that maybe this due date was a little unfitting, and you need a little bit longer to stay on this topic. So they extended it. Okay? And as I moved through the school system personally, I found that, and maybe you're experiencing something similar, the classes seem to get easier, at least for some classes, and it's some teachers. It's hard for teachers to relate to being 5 years old, right? Very rarely do we think back to what beliefs we held about chocolate milk, or, how the Lego table was reset in the morning. Things like that. But when we get to the high school age, it's a bit easier to relate to us and to the strict deadlines, the jerk teachers, and the bullies, and the social pressures, and maybe it's the distractions. Just I'm looking for another word, but I can't quite find it. But likely they're still taking classes and finishing their degrees even, so they understand the pains that you're currently experiencing. They understand the importance and value of 11:59 p.m. So, I know all of this seems unrelated, but I think it's important to have a realization, right? It's an important realization to have. And a lot of people have self-limiting beliefs about their intelligence due to, earlier school years, and as a result decide that college isn't for them, when simply that is not the case. It was not your fault as the student, and it was a faulty system. Now, what if you're still a student? How do you get the most out of it? Despite the situation, even if you don't have any of those, good teachers, you can still make the most of it. By law, we are required to attend school, so resenting our circumstance won't yield us better results or change the people around us. So it's time to change up our approach. If you aren't looking to further your education, college and technical school, etc., then you may see no point in learning about biochemistry and mathematical critical thinking and, or general psychology. However, chances are, if you're watching this you're looking to improve yourself. And you may think, well, the teacher doesn't care, so I shouldn't care either. And is that really the approach you want to take? There's one simple thing that turned me into an A and B straight student from having consistently gotten C's, D's, and F's. I missed out on 3 years of my primary education, completely voided. Like, I didn't even attend class. And I'm still an A and B student now. There's no excuse. You guys can do this, okay? You won't always understand what's being said. Hell, you'll probably only ever understand 20% of what's being said. But see it as a competition. A competition of who can ask the most questions. A competition to see who can get the teacher to walk out and quit their job first. Simply follow the instructions. Put away distractions and just listen. Like, just be present in the classroom. You don't have to even, like I said, understand what's being said. Simply be in the classroom, and you will pick up so much more than you think, right? You're already forced to sit there in the building for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week straight, nearly 180 days a year. What for? To sit around and distract yourself on Snapchat or make stupid faces to your friend across the room? While these are all fun parts of being young and they provide good memories, remember that you want to get better. School, while it may have a twisted approach, is intended to help you do that. Now, the key to learning how to value something is introspection and open-mindedness. Maybe it's that you've heard, it's something you've heard before, but think about the things you feel are a waste of time, and truly think hard about the potential value that there could be in them. Try to relate anything and everything you can and to each other, to one another, right? Really, there's a number of ways to develop a value for something. But if you want to shortcut the process and make your life more enjoyable and fulfilling, look for any possible lesson that you could take out of everything you do and everything you go through. Right? See it as an opportunity to get better. Do you have like U.S. history? Maybe you have like a bad grade in that, or maybe you've had it before and had a bad grade and you didn't like the class. Well, now you can see if it was just the teacher or if it was the actual content that was difficult. Maybe you can learn something about the important varieties or the virtues and natures of previous successful people and how they prospered. All right, then you can apply certain aspects of their mentalities to your self-improvement. Maybe you're a nerd and you like Vikings like me, right? So you enjoy the module on different ship builds, or northern England and Poland. You enjoy hearing about those. You enjoy studying about Germany, right? Maybe you learn some cool policies and systems from the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, right? And let me tell you, there is a lot to learn from the Industrial Revolution when it comes to our language and how we speak to each other, leadership, and there's just a lot there. Okay, I'm not going to go through all this, but you can explore a whole new world just from reopening your childish curiosity. Maybe you enjoy hearing about war and the psychology of war, being in life and death situations, Maybe you have a family member who served and you just want to understand some of what they went through. There are 1,000,001 different applications to any subject, including math. Just give it a shot. You don't need extreme creativity or a special ingenuity. All you need is an open and curious mind. If a subject doesn't resonate with you, find smaller parts of it that will. And once you become more interested, you'll inevitably develop better grades. And you won't have to study nearly as long or at all, because these last 2 years that I started making A's and B's, I never studied. Never. Right? You'll be more effective. You'll be a more effective learner. You'll spend your time more effectively, which is what everyone wants these days, right? You'll soak up more when you're in the same time that other people are only getting like half the information. Who knows? Maybe you'll find yourself to be a good student, and you may even start not to hate the idea of going to college anymore. Learning isn't simply memorizing useless facts. It's relaying the information and applying it to your life. When you figure out how to do that, literally anything is possible for you and your future. This was only one common example of being a student, right? There are countless other ways this skill could be used, and this is how you become a ruler, a diplomat, a king, a decision maker. Stay on task.